Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is an episode of the evolution of the Epstein Chronicles. So, I'm going to read an article today from 2016. This is an article from Vox, and the article has to do with the accusation that President Trump raped a 13-year-old girl while he was engaged in an orgy with Jeffrey Epstein. So we know that Jeffrey Epstein likes orgies, right? We know that Trump and Jeffrey Epstein hung out. The question is, what is Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, and how deep do those ties go? Are they friends that were only running in circles together when they were at events? Were they closer friends? When did Trump and Epstein stop really being friends? Now we have some things on record about Mar-a-Lago and how Trump threw Jeffrey Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago. So was that the beginning of the end of their friendship? Or was there other things there? You see, we don't have any of this information. Nobody has provided this sort of information. All they do is they throw up these headlines and then expect people not to ask questions. Well, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to read this article, and I'm going to give it the same exact treatment that I would give any of these other articles that we read. And then what we're going to do is I'll leave it up to you to decide. You folks out there, it's up to you to decide. My opinion is only my opinion, and you folks obviously come to your own conclusions on things. We're not going to agree on everything, folks, and that's okay. And for the people out there that are, getting a little squeamish right now and squirming in their seats who are President Trump fans, just like I tell people on the left, you guys got to step outside of your confirmation bias. You have to understand that we need to see all of the evidence in this case. And this is, we're going to read this like we would read anything else. If this was about, if you slip Clinton's name in here, I'd be reading it as well. You see, the thing is, though, Donald Trump and Bill Clinton are not named in these documents directly. And that's the standard that I have set on the podcast to go after these people, the people who are named in direct documents. And the only reason I'm reading this article is because there has been a couple of emails from people who I correspond with a little bit through the email channels who have asked to have it read. So I'm definitely going to read it for them. Like I said, if you guys send me articles and you want me to read them on the air, I certainly will. I don't have a dog in this fight, folks. I do not have a dog in this fight. I really don't care about any of these people. If Donald Trump is guilty of rolling with Jeffrey Epstein and he engaged in an orgy where a 13-year-old was raped, I would want him hung from the highest building in New York City, from his own building, perhaps. Do you understand? Anyone who's playing politics in this story is crazy. And you have to understand that when somebody is critical of the way the Mueller report was conducted or the way that whole entire investigation was conducted, doesn't mean they're giving Trump a pass. Go ahead and Google Glenn Greenwald. Go ahead and Google Jimmy Dore. Go ahead and Google Caitlin Johnson. These are all prevalent leftist writers. And they all called it a hoax from the very beginning as well. And what happened? They were smeared. You see, because the tribalism is so strong right now that anytime something makes somebody feel uncomfortable, that automatically means that the person that's making the statement is protecting enter boogeyman here. When in reality, some people are just calling them how they see them. And I know in such a charged political environment, it's hard for people to believe that, but that is the case. If I wanted to make political points in this case, I could light the whole entire DNC on fire for their connections to people like Epstein and Buck and, et cetera, all of these bagmen. But that's not what this podcast is about, folks. This podcast is to light people up who have been named in these documents and to put the enablers on blast. And for Trump, at the very least, Trump enabled Jeffrey Epstein's behavior by letting him in his circle. Now, I don't care what the excuse is from Trump. He should have never been hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein. And we all know that Trump is not what you would call a morally strong person. He's had affairs on his wife, et cetera, paid women to keep quiet about the affairs. Nobody thinks that's okay. Certainly I don't. I don't think that you should be putting your wife in that position. And if you're going to be the president of the country, you should set a better example. But just because I believe that, and I don't think that Trump is a good guy, I'm not going to be all gung-ho with my pitchforks and my tar over some crazy nonsense about Russia. That dog does not hunt, folks. You want to get mad at Trump? Get mad about the drone strike. All right? Get mad about any president with the drone strikes. Obama killed American citizens without due process with drone strikes. Anyone who thinks that's okay, well, we should have a nice long talk, because it is not okay for any of these presidents to do that. Every single president since Kennedy has been a war criminal, folks. Every last one of them. All right, so we're going to read this article. And if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. All right, to the article. The author is Emily Crockett. The article was produced on November 3rd, 2016. And the headline from Vox, the lawsuit accusing Trump of raping a 13-year-old girl, explained. And now Vox, in my opinion, is the equivalent to something like Breitbart on the right. So 15 women have now gone on record to say that Donald Trump sexually assaulted them. That's it, only 15? Donald Trump, really? 15 women? What sort of normal person has 15 women say that they assaulted them? All right? There's definitely something there. Donald Trump is definitely that kind of guy. He's definitely the sort of guy that thinks he can do what he wants, and that includes pursue whatever woman he wants, right? When you're a billionaire, that's what happens. You have these delusions of grandeur that everybody wants you. Meanwhile, nobody besides people that are looking for money is really trying to hang out with these old, crusty bastards. Why do you think that they had to get caught up in Epstein's trafficking situation? Out of all their stories, one is the most explosive and bizarre. A woman who says Trump violently raped her at an orgy when she was just 13 years old. But the horrific details of her accusation have gotten the least attention. It seemed like that all was going to change Wednesday when the woman, who was gone by the pseudonyms Katie Johnson and Jane Doe, was set to appear at a press conference at the law offices of Lisa Bloom. Lisa Bloom, folks. If you haven't listened to the episode about Lisa Bloom, I have a closer look at her and why she is such a shady and not so reliable person to be involved in this case. But, like I said, with the other girls, if Lisa Bloom is the one that's going to step up and defend these girls, and if Katie Johnson truly was raped by Donald Trump, well, I would hope that Lisa Bloom would hound him until there was no one left to hound, would hound him until Donald Trump was forced to talk. But the woman didn't come to the press conference. Okay, why didn't she come to the press conference is the question I ask myself. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what is a credible accusation and what isn't credible? And the bar I have set is it has to be in court documents. And if it's not in court documents, then I'm not going to tie you to the actual trafficking ring. Now, I could label you as an enabler, and I have done that with Trump. But she didn't go to the press conference. The accuser didn't go to the press conference. There's no other evidence presented here. So what do you want people to do? Bloom told a room full of waiting reporters that Johnson was afraid to show her face after receiving multiple death threats and that they would have to reschedule. Hey, look, if anyone is threatening this girl's life because she has an accusation against Trump, they should be arrested, and it should be found out who they're working with, who they're working for, and they should be forced to roll over and give those people up as well. Because just like I say, I don't care. I really don't care. If this girl has a credible accusation, then we need to hear it. We need to hear her accusation, and if Katie Johnson is listening, or somebody that represents Katie Johnson is listening, I would love to talk to you on or off the record and hear your story. I'm not saying I don't believe her, folks. I don't think we have enough information to make a decision one way or the other if we can believe this accusation. Now, is it possible? All things are possible with billionaires. That one thing I have learned is all things are possible with these billionaires at this point. And I don't think Donald Trump is a morally good guy. I do not think he's a morally good guy, and I wouldn't leave him in a room unattended with my girlfriend. if you want me to be frankly honest with you. But we need to have tangible evidence. We need to have credible accusations. And again, this story could be true. And if it is true, now would be the time, Katie, to come forward. You have other people that'll stand shoulder to shoulder with you, and with all the stuff that's going on with Trump and the impeachment, if you come and you have a bombshell like this and you have evidence to back it up, this could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. If they're going to protect the whistleblower, you got to think they would protect Katie Johnson if she wants to come forward. And if they don't protect her, shame on them. Shame on the scum in Congress. Because this girl, if this truly happened to her, this is absolutely, positively horrendous, folks. Absolutely disgusting, absolutely reprehensible, and absolutely unacceptable from any elected official, never mind the president, okay? So if there's proof of this, bring it forward now so we can add it to the impeachment articles and we can get on with the people's business. It's not uncommon for victims of sexual assault to want to preserve their anonymity, and dropping a lawsuit doesn't mean admitting that the case had no merit. I agree with that. It does not mean that the case had no merit. She could have been scared. There could have been people threatening her. We don't know, and we will never know. So what happens then, it's vague. It leaves it in a vacuum, and it leaves it up to your interpretation. And what happens is whichever way your bias goes, you're going to say, oh, Trump was definitely involved. Or you're going to say, there's no way Trump could ever be involved in that. And both of you are wrong, because none of you have the evidence to prove it one way or the other. All we have so far is this girl's statement coming out and saying that this happened. We don't have any other witnesses coming forward and in a deposition saying that, yeah, I remember this. Whereas with Virginia Roberts, she's credibly accused these people, folks. Court documents, lawsuits, the whole flip. And again, that doesn't mean that Katie Johnson didn't suffer this sort of attack. She quite possibly could have. I have no idea. I was not there. All we're going on is her word at this point, though. And in America, that is not enough to convict somebody. That is not enough to ruin somebody's life, right? Now, if she was to come forward again and say, look, this happened to me, I would want her to sit down with the FBI and give them a statement so that they can pursue Donald Trump and get a subpoena to go after him. So if Katie Johnson is out there and this occurred and Lisa Bloom fumbled the ball or she didn't feel safe, I think now is the perfect time for her to come out and, jump in with some of these other lawyers, perhaps that aren't Lisa Bloom, some of these other lawyers that protect their clients. And it would indeed have been an intense couple of days for Johnson. Bloom said that her firm's website was hacked, that Anonymous had claimed responsibility, and that death threats and a bomb threat came in afterwards. I don't really know the validity of any of that. I don't know if were there police reports filed? Anonymous, that's kind of a vague explanation of things, right? Isn't it just a group of hackers from around the world? And don't they usually go after people like Jeffrey Epstein and people like Donald Trump? So that's a little weird. Again, I don't know what happened to her website or anything like that, but I tend to not believe Lisa Bloom as much as I don't believe any of these other enablers. It was the end of an incredibly strange case that featured an anonymous plaintiff who had refused almost all requests for interviews, 2 anonymous corroborating witnesses whom no one in the press had spoken to, and a couple of seriously shaded characters with anti-Trump agenda and a penchant for drama who had aggressively shopped the story around to media outlets for over a year. Again, folks, this is Vox writing this. It doesn't get much more left or liberal than that. It's hard for me to take this the same way I would take the Prince Andrew allegations in comparison, considering all the other stuff around this case. I'm not dismissing it, and I don't have any evidence to prove that Donald Trump did not do what they're accusing him of doing. He hung out with Jeffrey Epstein. They were friendly. Did it happen? I don't know. Maybe it did. But from the evidence that we have so far in this case, Do you really think that this would get put into court and it would be tried and there would be a conviction? And that's what the standard needs to be, folks. It's not what we think we know, it's what we can prove. Those shady characters, a former reality TV producer who calls himself Al Taylor, and a never-Trump conservative activist named Steve Baer, had been mostly unsuccessful in getting the media to bite. There were a few very good reasons for that, which the Huffington Post's Ryan Grimm summed up. Taylor and Baer have been really sketchy about the whole thing, and since the accuser is anonymous, journalists can't do anything to verify her claims. The only journalist who has actually interviewed Johnson, Emily Sugarman at The Revelist, came away confused and even doubting whether Johnson really exists. This is, again, folks, this is from Vox. And to those of you who wanted me to cover this is why I haven't brought it up before, because it's all hearsay. Now, the stuff about Trump being accused of sexual assault and all of that is not hearsay. There are a lot of women who have came forward and said that Trump has touched them and forcibly kissed them, groped them, that all of that needs to be talked about. There is zero doubt about that. But as far as this Katie Johnson situation, it's hard for me to cast the net over him right now without the evidence. Again, this is what Vox is saying. All right? Journalists from Vox, all these other left-wing outlets, this story was passed to them and they all passed on it. So and we all know that their standards are incredibly lax as well. All right? So if they're passing on it with their lax standards, what makes you think that any of the major outlets are going to pick up on this case? Since a tape of Trump bragging about sexual assault came out in early October, a dozen named women have come forward with credible, similar-sounding allegations of Trump forcibly kissing or groping them in exactly the same way he described on that tape. And with that allegation, I could definitely see that. There's definitely there. Trump is definitely that kind of guy. He thinks he can do whatever he wants. Trump's no different from the rest of these billionaires. He thinks that he can do whatever he wants whenever he wants to do it. And the rest of us just got to go along with it. Look at how quickly he gets rid of people from his cabinet. Look how quickly staff members are fired. Johnson's case was an outlier with far more salacious allegations from a source that seems far less credible. But Trump was still scheduled to answer those allegations in front of a judge on December 16th. Again, she had him right there to go and answer these allegations, and they had Baer had him Trump right there to go answer the allegations, but nothing came of it. She canceled it. She canceled the case. She, got rid of the charges. She said, no, I'm not pursuing this. Now that's not going to happen, and we may never learn anything more about the matter unless and until Johnson decides to break her silence. The lawsuit made horrifying allegations against both Trump and celebrity pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Johnson claimed that Trump violently raped her when she was 13 at a 1994 orgy hosted by Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire pedophile who was convicted in 2008 of soliciting an underage girl for prostitution and has been accused of having sex with more than 30 underage girls, making her closer to 100 now, folks. Johnson's lawsuit mentioned Trump's friendship with Epstein and a comment Trump made in 2002 about their respective tastes in women. I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. The lawsuit alleged a number of charges against both Trump and Epstein, including rape, sexual abuse, assault and battery, and false imprisonment. Johnson said that when she was 13, Epstein lured her to parties at his apartment by promising money and a modeling career. I do not doubt that occurred. That's exactly Jeffrey Epstein's MO. He loves to get them girls in for money, and I could get you this job as a model. We can take it to the next level. Look at what all these other girls have been able to do professionally, and all you got to do is give me a massage every now and then. Isn't that a great deal? Johnson said Trump had sexual contact with her at 4 of those parties, including tying her to a bed and violently raping her in a savage sexual attack. The lawsuit said Johnson loudly pleaded with Trump to stop, but that he responded by violently striking plaintiff in the face with his open hand and screaming that he would do whatever he wanted. After that, Trump allegedly threatened to harm or kill Johnson and her family if she ever told anyone. Johnson said Trump told her that he could make them disappear like Maria, a 12-year-old girl Johnson says Trump also forced her to have sexual contact with, and whom Johnson hadn't seen since that encounter. All right, so there's a lot there to unpack. Where is Maria? Why we need to know who this Maria girl is, just like the Swedish girl, because if this girl suffered this horrific attack, then she needs to have her justice. She needs to have justice as well. Johnson also accused Epstein of raping her anally and vaginally despite her loud pleas to stop, and that he attempted to strike plaintiff about the head with his closed fists while he angrily screamed that he, defendant Epstein, rather than defendant Trump, should have been the one who took plaintiff's virginity. The court filings also included a statement from Tiffany Doe, another anonymous woman, who said that she witnessed the rapes and procured the young girls for the parties, and Joan Doe, a classmate of the victim, who said she was told about the rapes during the following school year. Tiffany Doe said that Epstein and Trump knew that Johnson was 13. All right, so there is a lot there, folks. I have not been able to find any evidence of any of this stuff, of these statements anyway. I can't find that evidence. I've looked. There's nobody on record coming out as Tiffany Doe. There's nothing. There's nothing. So it's basically hearsay at this point. Inconclusive. Did Trump do it? Didn't he do it? I don't know. I don't have that information. So once again, it'll come down to your own opinions, folks out there. I trust you to make the right opinions about this sort of thing. And when the evidence is presented to you, you say to yourself, all right, well, what does the evidence say? And is it likely that this person was engaged in this? An earlier lawsuit Johnson filed against Trump was somewhat fishy. The lawsuit Johnson filed in New York was actually her second attempt to sue Trump and Epstein. The first was in California in April of this year, a claim Johnson filed herself that got thrown out on technical grounds. She'd filed a civil rights suit, but failed to actually state an applicable civil rights claim. There were a couple of odd things about that lawsuit. The address listed on court documents as Johnson's was actually a foreclosed, abandoned home, and the phone number was disconnected. Maybe Johnson was just using a fake address because she was homeless. She was, after all, also described as being indigent, but it's fishy. The lawsuit also described details that were so lurid, almost cinematic in their depravity, as Jezebel's Anna Marlin put it, that they're almost hard to believe. Some of those details were omitted from the second lawsuit. The New York Daily News reported. Gone from the lawsuit is an allegation that Trump threw money at the plaintiff for an abortion when she expressed fear about getting pregnant after being raped. Gone, too, is the allegation that Trump called co-defendant and accused pedophile and sex party host Jeffrey Epstein a Jew bastard and her request for $100 million in damages. What the hell? But the details that remain in the second lawsuit, filed with the help of the New Jersey patent attorney Thomas Mager, who says he volunteered to take the case after reading about it, are still shocking. The allegations are not only categorically false, but disgusting at the highest level and clearly framed to solicit media attention, or perhaps are simply politically motivated, Trump told Radar Online in April after the lawsuit was filed. There is absolutely no merit to these allegations, period. And here is where the media is at fault. For years, they've called Trump the boogeyman. They've attacked him at every single turn. Of course, people are going to be skeptical about the things you say about him now. People aren't just going to believe the stories the media throws out there. So when people hear a story like this, the first thing they think about is, here we go, another person trying to persecute the president. And you really can't blame people for thinking like that, especially, and this goes both ways, folks. It goes both ways, especially when you want your confirmation bias to be real so bad that you're willing to sacrifice any form of credibility to get there. Johnson's case has been promoted to the media in truly bizarre, suspicious ways. This spring, a man called Al Taylor sent a video of a woman with a blurred face and a blonde wig, allegedly Johnson, recounting the allegations against Trump to news outlets, saying he wanted $1 million for it. Taylor, The Guardian reported, was actually Norm Lubow, a former producer on The Jerry Springer Show, who has a history of using fake names and disguises to make juicy, false claims about celebrities. The lawsuit was promoted to the media by an anti-Trump, anti-abortion activist named Steve Baer, a conservative activist and donor with a very influential email list that he uses to relentlessly spam reporters and conservative power players. Baer, too, has a history of passing around woe if true rumors. Last year, he was a key figure in spreading the notion that U.S. Representative Kevin McCarthy was having an extramarital affair with a woman in Congress when McCarthy was a candidate to become Speaker of the House. Baer told Emily Sugarman at Revelist that Taylor met Johnson at a party and asked her if she had any good celebrity gossip. When she talked about her assault, Taylor apparently didn't want to touch the story at first, but then circled back with Johnson about it once Trump's campaign started picking up steam. To hear journalists who interacted with them tell it, Baer and Taylor come off as obnoxious, persistent in pushing the story, and infuriatingly evasive when asked for interviews with Johnson. Jezebel's Anna Merlin published a long account of the bizarre antics. And there's a hyperlink to that article in here, so if you want to do a little bit more of a further dive, you can click on that hyperlink and follow it there and do a little bit more research. Taylor, in particular, comes across as volatile and a little scary. Merlin reported that Taylor told her to suck my D when she confronted him about his identity, and that he made harassing phone calls to other journalists. He also appears to have sent at least a few text messages and emails while posing as Katie Johnson, or at least messages that Mager, Johnson's attorney, denies that Johnson sent. All right, so this is a weird case, right, folks? There's a weird case of a lot of hearsay, a lot of players on the stage who were involved in all kinds of other funky things. And remember, this is Vox writing this story. We're not reading this from Breitbart. We're not reading it from Wall Street Journal. And Vox is skeptical of this story. The Daily Beast is skeptical of the story. Revelist was skeptical of the story. So you can't label somebody as being biased if they're skeptical of this story without any evidence being present, right? So, again, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm of the mind that it is inconclusive until we see more evidence. If these folks have the evidence and they have the goods that Donald Trump raped this girl at an orgy at Jeffrey Epstein's house, bring it to the forefront. If for not on any other reason, then it would be the perfect time. If you truly want to get rid of Trump, this would be the perfect time and the perfect crime to slap on him. So if anyone out there has it, if anybody has the goods out there, let's get going. All right? We need to figure out the Trump situation real soon because we need to get back to the people's business. Enough is enough. The Daily Beast's Brandy Zadrozny also has a colorful story about the time Baer and Johnson had an epic public meltdown at each other over Baer's email list, CCing journalists all the way. In short, these guys are a train wreck, but they've basically been the public face of Katie Johnson for the year. Again, Revelist's Emily Sugarman is the only journalist who has managed to interview Katie Johnson. She says Mager offered her the chance to interview Johnson over FaceTime from his office in Princeton, New Jersey. But Johnson apparently decided she didn't want to do it after all, and the interview was canceled. 3 days later, close to midnight, Sugarman finally talked to Johnson over the phone in a conference call with Mager. There were some odd things about that call, Sugarman writes. Johnson's voice was muffled and far away when she answered. She said she was speaking softly because she didn't want anyone to overhear her. Several times she paused mid-sentence and I could hear her moving something. She has dogs, Mager explained. Sugarman says Johnson was vague in her descriptions of Epstein's parties and how many people were there and wouldn't go into details about what she was asked to do. Again, folks, it's hard to report credibly on something like this because there's not enough there. Whereas Virginia Roberts is flipping off names, she has dates, she has receipts, she has pictures, she has so much stuff. So that's a credible accusation. And when you don't have all of the stuff, all of the evidence that you need to make it a credible accusation, then it becomes a world of, all right, who do you believe? And everybody has to make that decision on their own. I'm not going to call anyone who believes her story stupid or ignorant or naive because I don't have the information that can disprove this either. And in this case, there is a lot of people involved that you would never think would be involved. And if it comes to light that Trump truly did this, would I be shocked? I would not be shocked, folks. All right. And would I be shocked if this was just another hatchet job, another way to try and get rid of Trump? Again, I would not be shocked that way either, folks. I will go where the evidence leads me. And so far, the evidence has not led me anywhere with this story that would be even close to being legit sourced material. Some of the details she did give were consistent with descriptions of Epstein and his house Vicky Ward listed in a 2003 Vanity profile, which could either lend credence to Johnson's story or suggest that Johnson just read the Vanity Fair story as research. Again, I won't say that. I won't say that she's lying about this because I don't know. I don't know enough about the accusation. She hasn't come forward with it. If she comes forward and gets on record and I believe that there's there, I will be just as quick to defend her as I am of Virginia Roberts. You see, the thing is this, folks. Virginia Roberts has proven, to me anyway, that what she is talking about is very credible. She has evidence. Other people corroborating her stories. Other people that come forward and say, look, this happened. I was the pilot. Most troublingly, a detective who worked with Epstein's victims called into question a key part of Johnson's story. Hearing her answers that night, I had to remind myself that PTSD from sexual trauma is known to damage victims' memories, and that the party she recalled allegedly happened more than 2 decades ago. But Mike Fiston, a retired Miami-Dade detective who conducted research for several of Epstein's victims, denied such parties ever even took place. Jeffrey never had parties described in their complaint, Fiston told me. Jeffrey had sex parties, for sure, with 2 or 3 girls, but never with other guys. There were men in attendance at Epstein's more large, lavish affairs, Fiston said, but nothing illicit ever happened at such events. Mager, Sugarman wrote, is eager to put the focus back on the alleged rape of a 13-year-old instead of focusing on the antics of Taylor and Bear. Anything else, Mager told Sugarman, is allowing the sins of others to be visited upon my client. But until Johnson actually does break her silence in a bigger way, there are still a lot of questions yet to be answered. I don't know if the Katie Johnson I spoke to is the same girl who Trump allegedly raped in 1994, or if that girl even exists, Sugarman concluded in her piece. All I know is the reason why the woman I spoke to on July 11th chose to speak to me at all. I just want to get justice, she told me. I mean, these things happen to girls everywhere. I just want people to know. And I agree 100%. If this is the case, then justice must be served. 13 years old, folks. We know Epstein liked 13-year-old girls. We know that. That's for sure. But we can't corroborate the rest of this stuff. It's basically salacious. It's basically hearsay. Sexual assault has become an unexpected flashpoint in the 2016 election. The leaked tape that featured Trump bragging about committing sexual assault and the dozen women who came forward to allege that Trump actually did this was a massive bombshell in the presidential campaign. And remember, I told you the October surprise. There could be another one coming his way. We do not know. But when they released this tape, the whole idea, believe me, from a political standpoint, it had nothing to do with people being victimized. It had everything to do with politics. Trump was already well known for his many sexist insults and degrading misogynistic remarks, which Hillary Clinton was always quick to remind voters of on the campaign trail. But Trump's own words about groping women and the alleged deeds they corresponded to were on another level. While none of the allegations against Trump have been proven in court, most of them have been reported by credible journalistic outlets, including interviews with corroborating witnesses who say they heard the accuser's stories firsthand after they happened. And Clinton hasn't shied away from using these stories as campaign fodder. Michelle Obama gave a powerful speech condemning Trump's alleged actions, and the Clinton campaign ad just released a brutal attack ad claiming that Trump really did what he said he did on the infamous grab him by the pee tape. Now, isn't this where I would tee up some counter facts about the Clintons and go after them? I'm not going to do that. Do you know why? Because this isn't about the Clintons. And every time that you talk about the Trumps, you don't need to bring a crime from somebody else up. But the Clinton campaign hasn't touched the Johnson allegation, and with good reason. It's true that the allegation is explosive and could make voters see Trump's many disturbing comments about young girls over the years in a new light, but it's also very dubious and uncertain, and there's no real need to promote a case like that when a dozen women have come forward with much more credible stories using their own names and making themselves available to reporters for scrutiny. And again, those women who came forward and said that Trump touched them or that he forcibly kissed them, they should all be listened to, and they should all be given their chance to report what happened to them. There's witnesses, there's some evidence there, all of that needs to be looked into. All of it. Trump has denied all of the charges against him, but he's also tried to attack Hillary Clinton by parading around several women who have accused Bill Clinton of sexual misconduct and arguing that there's a double standard in attacking Trump on those grounds without also attacking Bill. And you see, I hate when Trump does that. It's whataboutism. Whataboutism does not work for me. I do not like it. It is weak. If we're talking about Trump, then let's talk about Trump. We don't need to have the Clintons involved. We're talking about Donald Trump right now. Just like if I'm talking about Donald Trump, I don't need somebody to bring up the Clintons. Okay? We're smart enough to know that we're talking about different situations. Anything else is just trying to change the narrative and turn it into what you want it to be. That's not how conversations go places. That's not how we have a healthy debate. Some of the allegations against Bill Clinton are more credible than others, but by making those allegations an issue at all, Trump makes himself more vulnerable to attacks based on allegations about his own behavior, even sketchier claims like Johnson's. All right, folks, there you have it. I've had several people ask me to read the article, and in my emails talking with you, I have said the same thing. I don't understand how we're at a point where all of this stuff, even this right here, hasn't been reported. There hasn't been a big push on this sort of case. There hasn't been people talking about Trump and Katie Johnson. And that's because, in my opinion, that doesn't mean that you have to share that opinion out there, folks. We're allowed to disagree. That's all right. There's no purity tests on the Jeffrey Epstein show. I want people that have different opinions than me on the show. I want to speak with people who have different opinions than me. That's the only way we grow. That's the only way we're ever going to learn. I don't live in an echo chamber. I don't watch news channels that are on TV. All right? I like to talk to all kinds of people. People that have different political points than me. People that think differently than me. People that have different opinions than I have. I don't want to talk to everybody who's like me and have my bias confirmed in every conversation. How do you grow? Your brain is like any other muscle. You have to work it out. And if everything's always easy or you're always in your comfort zone, well, you're not growing. You're not becoming as intelligent as you should be. You're not becoming as well-versed on the subjects that you should be. And with this case, with Katie Johnson, look, again, inconclusive for me. I'm not going to say that it did not happen, but the evidence isn't there to bring this to court and to get this to move anywhere. There's a reason that it wasn't brought to court, folks. There's a reason that they didn't bring this to its fruition to get Donald Trump there and subpoenaed and to talk. That's all of their dream. Don't you think that if they could have done that, they would have? So this is another case for me, inconclusive. We don't have enough evidence. Katie Johnson hasn't come forward, and I am open to hearing her if she comes forward in the future. I am not going to discount what she has to say out of hand. I'm going to listen to her. I'm going to thoughtfully research everything she has to say, and we're going to get to where we always get to with me. I'm a believe the evidence kind of guy. I'm not a believe all women guy. I'm not a believe all men guy. I'm not a believe all this is my political party, so let's believe them all guy. I believe evidence. And what I try to do is put my friends or my loved ones in the position of, is this enough evidence that I would say in my own brain, all right, there's enough there. I believe that this person should be looked into, even if it's my family. And that's the test that I use in my head. And for me, all these people that are named in the documents, the Glenn Dubins of the world, the Les Wexners of the world, these are people that are named in documents, court documents, and that is why they have been the focus of this podcast. You know, there's other people out there like Jessica Collins who have claimed that Joe Biden have used them in trafficking that Jeffrey Epstein has provided as well. You don't see me doing a whole 45-minute episode on that, right? Because it's unfounded, unfortunately. There's no evidence. That's not to say that Jessica Collins isn't right. That didn't happen to her. I do not know. What it is to say, though, is we do not have enough evidence that this would go anywhere in a court of law, in any courtroom in America. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that we can't discuss it. That does not mean that we can't bring it up here on the podcast. And that does not mean that I won't do a 40-minute episode on something like this. There were a few of you that wanted to hear about this case, the Katie Johnson case. And I tell you the truth, besides when it first came out and some of the research I have done into her claims and into the gentlemen that were pushing the story, I feel bad for Katie Johnson. If there is truly a real Katie Johnson who was abused like this and she's listening out there, you are not alone. You are one of these girls that I'm standing up for on a daily basis, Miss Johnson. Come forward. Let's get this stuff on record. Let's get you with a good attorney, a real solid attorney, not a patent attorney from New Jersey. Let's get you set up. Right now is the time. If there is anyone with evidence on Donald Trump being involved in these heinous crimes, being involved with Katie Johnson, now is the time, folks. If you want Donald Trump out of office and you have that evidence that he was involved with, especially raping a 13-year-old girl, let's get that evidence out there. Let's get it into the record, entered into the record, and let's move on with removing this man from office. Because if he was involved in this, he is absolutely, positively as repugnant as Jeffrey Epstein. And again, the allegations of the sexual assault, believe me, I don't agree with the way Donald Trump conducts himself in private, the way he conducts himself as a married man. But it's not my place to put a moral chart up and say, all right, as a married man, you have to conduct yourself this way. So I can't really light into anybody who has an affair. That's not my place. I'm not a religious guy. That's a personal problem between the people in the marriage. Now, the other stuff, the forcible kissing, the groping, all of that stuff, that is disgusting. There is no excuse for it. And any woman that he did that to should sue him, should get it all in the court record, and should get compensated for it, because that's not the way you conduct yourself. All right. That is certainly not the way the president of the United States should conduct himself. And I will always say that. I will always say that the office of the president has been extremely downgraded in the last however many years with the presidents that we've had. I really won't put Obama into that category as far as like morally bankrupt. I didn't like the man's policies, but I don't think that Obama was morally bankrupt. That's my personal opinion of the man, and we can go back and forth for 100 years on policy issues, et cetera, but Donald Trump, I truly believe that Donald Trump is morally bankrupt, folks. There is no doubt in my mind that Trump is morally bankrupt and that he definitely had an idea of what Epstein was up to, and he still let Epstein around him. He still enabled him all the way up till the blowout at Mar-a-Lago. We can't discount the fact that Virginia Roberts was groomed and procured from Mar-a-Lago. We can't discount those facts. That's all part of it. But does that make him somebody who is engaged in the trafficking ring, raping 13-year-old girls? I'll leave that up to you to decide. I will leave that up to you to decide with the evidence presented. But what I will tell you is this. He definitely does not get off he's not getting off on the charge of enabling. Donald Trump was definitely an enabler of Jeffrey Epstein. He definitely flew on his plane one time, and they had a relationship. And we saw from the quote that Donald Trump knew that Jeffrey Epstein liked him young. So My question is, why didn't Donald Trump say something? Why didn't Donald Trump stand up and say, look, dude, you're a sick perv, get out of here? And I know, I'm going to get emails from the conservatives now who listen to the show. Well, he threw him out of Mar-a-Lago, and I get it. I understand completely. I'm not saying that Trump raped this girl. What I am saying, though, is that he did enable Jeffrey Epstein's behavior, just like the rest of these high-crust society scumbags. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. If you would like to help support the podcast and you want to support our content, you can click on the link in the description box. I'll be back later on tonight with a daily drop, and if you guys are lucky, all right, maybe not lucky, but you know what I'm saying. Maybe there'll be a bonus episode for you to wake up to. All right, everybody, I will talk to you later on with the Daily Drop, and I hope that your weekend is getting off to an amazing start.